How's it, guys? I quickly want to give you a few tips on water reading and what to look for on the surf for edible fish like your kop, galjoen and steenbras. Now first of all, when I arrive at the beach, I look for a nice isolated bank. I like to fish a bank that sits apart from the rest, and obviously you want to see nice flat water, you want to see a low swell but a continuous swell rolling throughout the bank. I also look for a nice deep gutter right in front of the bank, and then maybe some deep water on the left or the right. I also look for the water surge, the current. If there's a strong current, I won't fish there because fish doesn't want to fight the currents and waste their energy. So they want to save their energy and sit at a certain spot where there's not a lot of surge. And sometimes that's right in front of the bank in the gutter. And you can catch a 10 kilo plus fish right in front of you, 20 meters out. And sometimes the first instinct that we have is to cast as far as we can. But if you can read the water correctly, you can make it a lot easier for yourself and catch bigger fish. So my favorite place to fish here on the surf is probably right in front of the sandbank, the deep gutter. I think it's got a lot of potential to hold good fish, especially just before high tide. And all that working water from the sandbank pushes all those crabs and shells and worms and stuff into that little gutter, and the fish just comes around and pick it up. Your smaller bait fish also hide on these banks, using the shallow water and the white water for shelter. So when the tide is halfway to full, you can throw right on top of the bank, as the banks are not deep enough for your predator fish like your kop to come on the hunt out of the deeper water. It makes it a good spot when the water is still pushing to put your bait over the edge of the bank, closer to the deeper water. So what you don't want fishing at the surf is a big sea and a lot of surge. You don't want waves picking up and falling flat on the sandbanks. So when that water picks up at the back and just falls on the sandbank, it's not really ideal conditions for fishing. You want that water to come from the back and just gradually breaking over the sandbank and rolling continuously throughout the bank. So this way the white water still makes shelter for the smaller fish. It still makes a great feeding place for your fish like your galjoen and steenbras, and it gives a lot of oxygen in the water, but not as much to waste their energy fighting the currents. So this raised the most obvious question: where should I cast? There's a lot of options. On the bank, behind the bank, before the bank, left or right of the bank, depending on the tide. When the swell is big, it makes it really difficult to throw over the bank because the shallow water on top of the bank, it washes your line to the side with the current and it pulls your sinker loose. This is where I use a big sandbank to stop that big sea, and I fish right before it. When the water is low or the water is very clean, I would fish the channels in between the sandbanks. I also like to fish on top of a sandbank where there's a small hole, and if you watch the formation of the water, you'll actually see that white water just disappearing, and that tells me there's deeper water, and it makes a great place for fish like galjoen, belman and steenbras. So my advice would be, go stand on a dune, look at the water, develop your own pattern and your own view on what the water should look like. Once you recognize good water formation, you will catch more regularly.